Hey everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thanks so much for joining me here. Hope you're having an amazing day. We're going to look at Axie Infinity once more, of course, get a kind of perspective on what's going on here. I've been covering this last few days just because of significant amount of requests, but more importantly, we were able to anticipate this breakout and make tons of cash with our trading community here in our Signal group. So really cool stuff there in that sense. Check that out in your own time, of course, if you're not currently a community member. I teach you how to trade with my trading academy. I send out signals for every trade that I take, and lately we've been hitting some pretty awesome busters there with Ethereum, Bitcoin, Axie Infinity, I think Zcash as well, a handful of others. So really cool stuff there. Check that out in your own time, CryptoCache.tech, link in the description below. And in here with Axie, let's go ahead and acknowledge some of the obvious and then work from there, right? So the obvious thing here is that we're well below the 200-day SMA. That's based on its overall momentous trend. It shot up super hard, super fast, and held for some time, and it was dying off ever since. And how we were able to pick out this breakout, just so you know too, because I get the question a lot, hey, how were we able to identify this? Well, I made a video on it too. Watch my first one from 3 days ago. But generally speaking, the price was right here at this point, about $52. And it was testing this resistance 3 days in a row. And the fourth day, of course, in most cases, you'll see a breakout. So that was kind of part of it. I do this trend line here, of course, as well, because you can see the price getting stopped out there, previous resistance. And of course, this ascending type of pattern that occurs. So when you have an ascending triangle, essentially going upwards, it keeps testing this support trend, and it keeps pushing the price action higher. It also, the very first trigger to keep in mind, was the simple fact that we have this descending type of pattern here, concurrent with the 50-day SMA, and once it broke above primarily the trend line, then it was poised and ready to break through the 50-day SMA right here. So again, a good handful of little things that kind of factor in, but a lot of these breakouts are just trend line plays. There's not much else to it. So just fun lines on the chart, right? They can be fun depending on how you draw them, but obviously, the choice is yours. So I need to say, that's kind of where we're at there for Axie and how we got here. Let's see what's going to happen next, if there's any potential for continuation. Keep in mind, we are testing 70 on the RSI right now. So if we can get a break or just say a clean close above 70 on the RSI, then there's a great chance that'll work as a support level and we'll see a continuation higher. Furthermore, we also got to acknowledge that $72 is a resistance. That's the most recent within the last 2 months high of $72. So keep in mind, 72 could be a point of contention. But all in all, the one-day chart looks great in that sense. Just note it is a bit on the overextended side, but not quite overextended based on how low it was for so long, right? Just basically it was, before it started this whole thing, it was bouncing off 50 on the RSI, but 3 days later, here we are, right? Another thing to note too, just kind of touch on this, it's never a guarantee, but when you have 3 continuation days, which technically this is really only 2 so far, it's called 3 white soldiers, the 4th day is almost always red. So you'll see a trend with crypto or just in general trading. You'll see 3 days of this, followed by a 4th day of that. So three green, followed by a red. 3 red, followed by a green. It's kind of a common place. Again, depends on the length and distance, right? If they're just 3 small little candles, it's not a huge deal. But you can kind of see in general that there's a common theme that happens with that. Anyways, I talk more about that in my other videos, and we talked about that in our trading community as well with our roundtable discussion this week, and that was kind of a cool thing to bring up. So thanks again, Rico, for acknowledging that. Now, taking a look here at Axie, let's go to the 4 hour and kind of work our way down. This is one thing that's, I would say, is potentially concerning because you can obviously tell how strong this momentum is. It's starting to lose its momentum, which is perfectly fine. It's not a bad thing, but when we're at an 8 on TD sequential, the likelihood of a pullback is getting higher, right? It's no guarantees. I've seen things go way past that, and I'm confident that Axie can do that. But realistically, traditional trading tells us that we are reaching an exhaustive state. We've been trading for 36 hours or 32 hours essentially at this price point, and it's been too much, too fast, okay? Again, that's just kind of the general sense of things. Now, this is a momentous trend, a momentum play, so to speak, so things do work a little different, but on the same accord, we just got to kind of acknowledge the elephant in the room, okay? That's one thing we got to note. Taking a look, though, at the moving averages, we're above both. That's nothing really important. I'm concerned with the RSI on the 70 RSI on the 4 hour. And what we're looking at for here is, first of all, when you have a price point above 70 on the RSI, no matter what time frame, if it breaks above and stays above, then when it comes back down, the likelihood of the RSI working as a support level is higher. Now, I don't love seeing an RSI over 70 on the 4 hour because I think that's a transitionary time frame. That this midterm time frame kind of helps us understand what's going to happen later. And if we're stuck well over 70 on the RSI on the 4-hour, then that'll translate to, again, a fourth red day on the actual time frame for the 1 day. Because again, there's that residual effect that happens. So generally speaking, at this point, I don't love that, but it's potentially going to work as a support. So if we see the price kind of, or the RSI slowly trickle down, or just say come back down, you can expect potential of this to bounce, okay? And what that does, that basically just tells us there's a strong likelihood of a bounce either A, off of 66.50, or just in general, when it retraces, it may not retrace as hard as you would expect based on its overall momentum and the additional volume that we're seeing here, okay? Kind of take those two things into consideration, volume plus RSI. They really speak loud, and it's telling us, yes, we're overextended, but we could effectively see that work as a support here soon. So I think the likelihood of Axie pulling back significantly is lower than it is for it to continue to progress higher. It's just it's overextended for the moment, and we need to acknowledge the fact that it might pull back a little bit and or consolidate in the near future. Okay. That being said, still a continuation play. I think there's nothing really in the cards here telling us that we're going to see Axie drop its bottom. But there's no doubt if Bitcoin corrects itself here soon, bounces off 44,500, comes down to 40,000 or something obnoxious, which is possible. I think it's less likely because that's also a momentum play. Then Axie will effectively have to follow suit to an extent. It may not just drop like a rock, but you'll always see a correction. And it might be a stronger correction than you anticipate. So I just recommend trading stop losses, multiple profit targets, set your trades up the way that I like to set them up. And yes, it's true. If you're a community member, you saw this. When I called Axie here, we got in right in this point. The price come up. We actually triggered our trailing stop loss, came back down and got stopped out, and the price came up ever since, right? So there's no doubt that if you play it too tight, you can effectively get stopped out. There's no doubt. But in this market right now, until Bitcoin is confirmed above 46,000, we don't have that official, breaking this trend line, or sorry, this channel that we're in right now, the 40 to 45,000 range. Then we can expect those kind of things to happen, and you want to play your cards a little tighter than usual, but it's getting looser now, if that makes sense, right? We can kind of get larger ranges and not get so stuck on tight stop losses. So again, just be cautious with your stop loss here. I'd say keep it loose in that regard, but also don't be afraid to take your profits if you're profitable, because obviously there's nothing here that tells us that we need to close our position. We're looking fantastic on every single front. Just the only thing to acknowledge though too is that we've hit 2 9s in a row, all right? And that's something I want to drive home. Last thing to talk about. This is important because I see this happen a lot in trading. When it comes to TD sequential, first of all, it takes the 4th previous candlestick, counts up to a 9, and essentially just it tells you when you're overexhausted. So we hit this exhausted state here to 9, right? It pushed up for some extra overtime, and it retraced back down. And what do you know? It bounced right off this support level here, established by the previous 9. So when you see a 9, this green line kind of comes out and tells you, hey, that's roughly where it hit an exhaustive state. If the price goes further than that, it'll come back down and bounce. So it's exactly what it did here. So we're at a 9 here now, right? We're reaching overtime. So potentially there's a support level right here at about $67, $68. So the price were to continue higher, it may come down and do the same thing. Just keep in mind, RSI on the 4 hours overextended. We've got to acknowledge that. That could factor in here as well. The last thing to touch on though here, oops, sorry about that, is to really understand that how 2 9s work in tandem. In other words, when you have a first 9 and then a second 9, the second 9 really tells you that you're at that extreme overexhausted state, okay? Because there's literally been no selling pressure almost this entire time, minus this little window here. So that being said, the likelihood of a pullback is greater based on that sentiment. When you hit 2 9s in a row, there's a likelihood of pullback. When you have 2 9s on 2 different time frames, it's also a likelihood of a pullback. You see a 9 on TD sequential on the 1 hour, and then you also see a 9 on, or in this case, technically it's an 8, but it should be a 9 here soon, right? Then there's a likelihood of a pullback and or consolidation. So I think it would be naive to anticipate Axie to continue to progress up higher right now. Will it continue higher overall in this trend? Yeah, there's a strong likelihood of that. In fact, we could probably even draw an aggressive trend line here and see where it goes from there, okay? So it'll probably continue to progress higher regardless of that fact, but it does need to consolidate, right? So again, just something to consider and acknowledge, but all in all, Axie is looking great. I think this is still a continuation play. Even though we don't have as much volume as we did previously, it's still a lot compared to before, at least the recent past, right? So this reintroduction of volume really helps us understand that we're probably going to see something like this and a push to the upside. But once again, 3 strong green days, right? Commonly results in a 4th red day. I know there's a doji there, of course, but generally speaking, that's kind of the concept. So keep in mind, we're at 2 solid, very strong green days. Tomorrow could also be a green day, but if we see a really strong green day tomorrow, you should expect a significant pullback. Okay. All right. Anyways, that's kind of where we're at there for Axie. We'll take another look tomorrow. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope you learned something. I know I kind of ramble on about certain things, but it's to help you become a better trader, because I don't think there's enough knowledge or information out there, unfortunately, in the crypto space that really helps you. Everyone's trying to give you the answers. Why not give you the solution of how to figure it out yourself, right? And that's where my trading community comes into play. So CryptoCache.tech is the website. I hope you can learn something, of course, and I look forward to getting to know you better. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks again for your time. We'll see you next one.